You so much. So, warm welcome to everyone, those who have joined recently, and thank you for those who were um, ready for this webinar much before the scheduled start time. Appreciate your valuable time for this session. I'm about to start the proceedings. Once again, thank you very much. Warm welcome to everyone. This is going to be a 3 consecutive days sessions. Each session will be starting at 3 p.m. and going to be a 75 to 90 minutes session, depending upon the questions and answers that we interact with. And I'm going to cover uh, three main topics of this webinar: program designing concepts, followed by outcomes education framework designing, which is primarily it is going to be the course outcome statements designing and assessments planned looking at the outcome statements at the course level. And the third important feature of this FDP is outcomes analysis and driving the continuous improvement. With that is relevant for you to in regards with the accreditation such as NAC and NBA, and those who are aspiring ABET accreditation for them also. These sessions will be useful. I intend to interact with all of you uh, in the uh, to learn also from all of you. So your questions will help me, learn from you. In the case of any uh, kind of misconceptions I am carrying about outcomes-based education, please feel free to bring it out to my notice. I would be glad to correct myself if I'm missing out on something. Please feel free to mention that in your post to me through the question boxes. Uh, since this is a webinar, no, by default everybody will be on mute to avoid the background noise. But I would appreciate if you would post your questions in the question box so that whenever time permits and whenever I intend to take a pause, I'll read out those questions and I will try to answer those. So that's the way we could interact with each other. You must have seen this email also, sent by me earlier. Um, so these are the three sessions that you could see here. The moment you go to the registration page, all of you have registered for this. Some of you have registered for second day and third day also. So please use the same registration link to go to the same form and pick the date and time and please register. So this is the start of our webinar. These are several topics that come to the mind when we think about outcomes-based education in regards with various accreditations and other rankings. And generally, NAP 2020 also is now um, addressing the need of implementing outcomes-based education in general. And there has been a great emphasis on the program designing in NAP 2020. If it is not directly mentioned, but you already must have read the document, you must have already participated in several discussions about it so far. And main feature of these uh, NEP 2020 is multiple entries and exits and of the students and in any program. And this is needless to say that if a student is exiting from a program, he or she may take admission to some other college, and continue the education from there. So whenever the student exits, obviously the student is going to go out with certain recognition, which is going to be helpful for the students to get some kind of work out there, and that is appropriate. And the skills that the student should carry at that point in time should be sufficient for the student to get a meaningful, a job, to earn something and then come back to the education if required. This concept is already there in the West, so it is not theoretical concept. It is already proven, tried, tested concept in the US, as you must know that. And that the same concept is now borrowed here by our country, and that is going to have a great impact on the program designing. So we obviously are going to discuss a lot about it, and think about how the program is to be designed by considering various aspects of NEP 2020 or NAC or other accreditation bodies. Plus, in general, what should be done generally to address the overall requirement of the students of 21st century. So this is going to be obviously a debate, kind of brainstorming. The ideas that I'm going to share with you uh, are generated out of several discussions that we have had in the past with very senior academicians in the country, consultants and uh, advisors associated with us as a on our panel. Uh, as you know, I represent a company called Inpods India Private Limited. It's an American company, and Inpods Inc. And Inpods India is a subsidiary of Inpods Inc. And we deal with education technology and since last 10 years, and that has allowed all of us in the company to understand this space, this field in depth, and we gathered all our insights, experiences while working with real life solving a real life problems, helping the universities and the institutions implement outcomes based education and other aspects of reformation in the quality of teaching, learning, and assessment. And that has helped us to know many things that are, how those things should be done rightly. And I'm going to share those experiences and insights with all of you during these 3 day sessions. So I would like to start with an idea related to the quality assurance of educational processes. As we know, if when we think about the learner of 21st century, it's also considering their requirements. Various efforts are being taken by the governing bodies in our country. The accreditations manuals are, communicating the need of the change in the teaching, learning, and evaluation, as well as the policy such as National Education Policy 2020 also communicates the same thing. And that is mainly because of the way the overall the world is evolving, and we are all part of it. We know that the students who born 10 to 15, rather, maybe 5 years to 10 years from now would be in the higher education 5 to 10 years from now. And the kind of exposure that these students are having, we can imagine the kind of challenges we as teachers facing. And so that is the reason the whole orientation of the educational processes requires to be handling, addressing the needs of the modern student. So this is obviously when we talk about quality assurance, immediately the we have to think about quality culture in our organization. And when it begins the discussion about the quality culture, the first important aspect is the reference point. What should be that, right? Are there any reference point from where we can start? So natural inclination is to go towards some kind of manuals, such as accreditation manuals or national policies. They are the guidelines. And then since we are anyway supposed to comply with them, that's good. That could be a good starting point. It's a good bet to use that as a reference point. Obviously, if you find that there are certain uh, gaps in the are the since these are generic documents, but you may want to customize it for and make it more relevant for your kind of organization. and that's possible. So once that is done, we this organizational values then can be drafted. Uh, Obviously, the leadership, the management's involvement in this is very important, and then this message should be communicated formally to everyone in the organization that these are the shared values we need to, embrace. So everybody's participation is expected now once the management communicates it to everybody, and then progressively, the after it is it takes some time obviously, but progressively, when the every individual starts embracing the values which are described here in the common goals, vision, or mission, then it is said to be the culture of quality, in place. So that's the transition, and the obviously, um, if we don't have anything readily available which is tried, tested, and customized by us for our organization, good starting point is various accreditation manuals and the policies, which are anyway are supposed to be complied by us. But in addition to that, if we want to do something more on top of that, obviously that is going to be the shared trusted value that we want to embrace and want to implement in our organization. And then it is expected that every individual in the organization understands that and helps in implementing those guidelines, and that is then that would be the sign of a quality culture in, being implemented in the right manner. So that's going to be obviously the starting point, and many progressive universities uh, and educational institutions in India have already started doing that, and they are orienting their programs, their academic structure towards NEP 2020. I'm already aware of this, and already I'm fortunate to have been working with such a progressive universities, and we are exchanging ideas and thoughts very freely. In fact, they are considering us as one of their partners in implementing it, and then obviously that is exposing us to know how exactly practically these concepts are being implemented. And obviously, this is going to be a very um, a journey as far as I'm concerned, going to be wonderful, and because it's going to not only help each other to use expertise and implement this NEP 2020 in the right manner, which is going to help our students grow, in their career as a student, as well as after they finish their education, they can be in the right place if the things are done correctly. So that is the gen, uh, prologue for the discussion that we are going to have today. Please feel free to share your comments and suggestions and the questions in the question box. Occasionally, I'll be looking at this and responding to you accordingly. So let's look at what the accreditations like NAC, policies like NAP 2020, and some external forces are talking about. What is the background of this? How these three things are going to impact on program designing, right? So that's our first, uh, the topic, program designing. And then program designing is going to lead us to the discussion about outcomes-based education. And then that is going to lead the discussion of outcomes analysis and continuous improvement. So it's a top-down approach, and we have to. That's the reason I'm spending more time on making sure that the background for program designing is clear. And then we, in light with this background, we then start looking at the program designing process. Just try to do that. So uh, many concepts that you would see in various policy documents and accreditation manuals, you will see that those concepts primarily were taken from manufacturing industry because they are the early revolutions in any case. So many ideas emerge out of the efforts taken by manufacturing industry in last 100 years or plus. And earlier they were into quality control, and then they realized that quality control is not good enough. They moved to quality assurance, and then whole orientation of their manufacturing processes where they went in the direction of quality assurance, and then those ideas are also taken by us here. Obviously there could be some disagreements when the concepts are borrowed from some parallel industry. um, Naturally there could be some it may not be completely fit here, because we are dealing here with human beings, and these are not machines. So naturally the challenges are different in education field. So there could be some argument about whether this could work correctly or not. However, I mean, obviously, it is accepted that measuring creativity, ingenuity, innovativeness, perseverance, and so on is difficult to measure. But at the end of the day, there has to be some method in the madness. Unless and until something is measured, it is unlikely to be improved. Right? You would agree with this. And so that's the reason many education researchers have taken efforts in um, finding out whether there are any ways in defining how the quality in education could be improved, enhanced continuously. So such efforts were taken by UNESCO or UNICEF, and where several conferences have been conducted to devoted to uh, this topic of quality in education. And one such reference point is Dakar framework. Dakar is a city in Senegal, and the name of Dakar framework follows with the name of the city. And you can see this, you can Google and find out more about Dakar framework. You'll find this paper. And there are 5 dimensions that they came up with here. These are learner, environment, content, process, and outcomes. These 5 dimensions, according to Dakar framework, are important. So I attempted whether these dimensions are visible in the NAC manual, or initially I started comparing, analyzing that. I found good references mapping and this of this concept 5 dimensions with NAC manual. So if you look at the learner as the dimension, the student support and progression, teaching, learning, and evaluation, these two uh, criterions are talking about the learner. Environment, research, innovation, and extension. Infrastructure and learning resources, governance, leadership, and management. These criterions are going to form the environment for the student for the learners. The content, uh, obviously, this is referred in curricular aspects, research, innovation, and extension. Program designing falls into content. We are going to talk about that. And process, teaching, learning, and evaluation, student progression and support and progression, institutional values and best practices. They all fall into the process part of the framework. And outcomes, curricular aspects, teaching, learning, and evaluation addresses the learning outcomes of the students. So I could find a good relevance, good mapping of these Dakar frameworks 5 dimensions with NAC manual. You please try, if you could find out more such references in other accreditation manuals or in even in NEP 2020. Please do share here as well as later on. You can please share your thoughts on this. But there one more interesting thing here is that since the modern education is learner centric, these dimensions are actually actually there are, although these are 5 dimensions, but uh, the learner dimension has the focus of other 4 dimensions, right? Environment, content, process, outcomes are all focused towards learner, although learner is a separate dimension. So that's an interesting point here. So if you, this is a snapshot of the NAC manual of you for universities and autonomous colleges. If you look at the first criteria, curricular aspects, the key indicator of curriculum design and development, very clearly it mentions that one of the significant responsibilities of universities and autonomous colleges is curriculum design, development, and thus are expected to have processes, systems, and structures in place to shoulder this responsibility. So first, obviously, it's already there, and however, the orientation of this process is now has to be towards outcomes, program level outcomes, you know, and course level outcomes, and there has to be a way to um, implement it, and then assessment of the student performance for the attainment of POs and the COs. So interestingly, here, here not only the here is there is a mention of uh, the curriculum design and orientation of that towards outcomes based education. Very importantly, they have mentioned the assessments of the student performance, so analysis comes in picture here, and attainment of the COs and POs and the COs is also mentioned here. So attainment is a very deep word. It requires a lot of data gathering and analysis and identifying the weaker students, weaker areas, or slow learners. If you don't like weaker is a word, right? Or if you don't like slow learner, use weaker, whichever way. But the whole uh, objective here is to identify some hotspots and then plan the remedial actions. These remedial actions may or may not be tactical. They may be strategic also many times. And depending upon that, the scope of remedial action is supposed to change, based on the insights that you gather from your analysis. That's the idea here. If you look at the NEP 2020, I'm obviously not going to read out. Someone is saying that my voice is breaking. If it is a problem that is commonly faced, please do let me know. Uh, However, I'm on a very fast broadband connection, so I'm making sure that there is no constraint from my end at this point in time. But if it is a generic problem, then I may have to do something. Uh, Let me know. So NAP 2020, obviously, I'm not going to read out each and every line here, but essentially the main idea that is being communicated by the document is that the students will have multiple entries and exits. In addition to that, there are important references given here. Given the here, for example, given the 21st century requirements, quality higher education must aim to develop good, thoughtful, well-rounded, and creative individuals. I'm going to share some more ideas in regards with this, but generally, the you can imagine, you can see here that program designing is going to have a great impact of all these ideas, and the compliance is required. Value-based education also is to be one of the key things to be considered. Uh, in my humble opinion, I don't believe that value-based education requires to be considered as a separate course. There is no need for that. It is easily, these values could be added easily in the existing curriculum without adding as a separate course for value-based education. That's not, I think, is to be aimed at. This is my personal opinion. You may not agree with this. However, easily you can define you can frame the questions and the curriculum such a way that the value gets automatically translated to the learners. For example, here your friend Ranjana complains that somebody has created a fake profile on the Facebook and defaming her character with abusive comments and pictures. Identify the type of cybercrime for those situations. If a question is framed like that, it automatically communicates what is wrong, what is bad, and what is good. So that's, I think that's the automatic conveying the values to the students, and that's also expected. So a lot of efforts will have to go in the direction of implementing the NEP correctly. Obviously, it is not going to be easy task, but a lot of research that is anyway happening in many other fields of everyday life. Probably educators may have to do research in these important aspects of education also, and that might lead into a good progress of our country in implementing the value-based education. I hope you would agree with this comment. Now, we talked about the frameworks like ENAC or policy like NAP 2020. Let's look at some external forces which are also important and going to impact the program designing. Let's look at what those could be. So, uh, the changes which are happening rapidly around us obviously are going to be so fast that by the time the students graduate, the world is changed a lot. So we are unable to prepare the students for the problems which do not exist today. So we obviously have to then prepare them for something that is unknown, and so that and they are able to cope up with those challenges. So their readiness, their preparedness should be directed in that direction. So only then these rapid changes could be probably the students will be prepared to handle those. Industry is already communicating us about the unemployability of the students, right? And they tell us that after they recruit the fresh engineers, they have to prepare them again, finish their conceptual understanding of everything, their skill sets, their competence, and then take them into the projects. So that is the time that they invest in after the recruiting a fresh engineer, which they want to cut off and then make, so that the students are kind of ready to work in a shorter period of time here. And so these rapid changes are going to make this problem much more severe in my opinion, and hence probably we'll have to also think something different when we start thinking about program designing and consider this particular parameter also in mind. Uh, Student mindset obviously is going to be totally different than the students of today or when we were students 30, 20, 15 years ago. Our mindset was different than the mindset of today's students, and it is unlikely it is going to be further different after 5 to 10 years from now. And that is a time when the students who born 5 to 10 years from now, where we'll be entering into higher education, and that's why we know the kind of mindset that these students will have. Shorter span of attention is one of the biggest challenges. Explosion of the data is also related to rapid changes, but rapid changes are happening in various domains of life, but the amount of that change is also very huge. So that's the reason the theoretical, the disciplinary knowledge that we are delivering may not be sufficient at all. So why to waste time in delivering some small fragment of fraction of the that disciplinary knowledge when you know that it is expanding such a at a rate which you are unable to cope up with, unable to cover. So what needs to be communicated in the when you deliver the disciplinary knowledge, that will come under the scanner very soon. The shift in the skill needed, I'm going to have a separate slide on this, so I'm going to show you what I mean by that. And then rigidity in program designing, which is currently is there, will have to be very dynamic in the future. And that is the reason the statement which we saw read earlier from the manual of NAC will have to be now relooked at from this perspective, whether the current processes that are there with the universities and autonomous colleges are dynamic enough to accommodate the faster changes in the program designing. And very nicely NAC manual addresses this in the I think 1.1.1 or 1.1.2, I guess, metric in the and they try to check with you how many courses have undergone revisions in the last 5 years. And the whole idea of collecting that kind of metric is not to measure your performance with respect to that, but making you think about that, hey, this is going to be important. And are you prepared for that? So very NAC manual is really nicely designed. A lot of thoughts have gone into that. It is preparing the education institutions for handling the kind of rapid changes which are going to happen in the future. So that is about the impacts of external forces on our thought process, which is important. Now, shift in the competence, which is one of the changes that are going to impact, is also is very important aspect of program designing. So we began when organized labor started working in some a few hundred years ago, where they started working in farms, uh, and then that was actually the start of some kind of organized or little unorganized sector for the labor force. And main skill that got used at that time were psycho motor skills, which were required in the farming. Progressively, industry age required psychomotor plus cognitive and affective domain skills. Information age, which is today's age, required deeper cognitive and affective domain skills because supervision role emerged, manager role emerged. Then analytical mind was required in solving the challenges, bigger problems, complex issues, and hence deeper cognitive skills were required. And now it is expected that in the near future, more of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, and learning to learn kind of skills will be required more than anything else. But if now you think about today's curriculum design, how much of the curriculum addresses these skills which are expected to be the need of our in the near future. And hence, if you believe that there is a need of some changes in the curriculum design to address requirement of such skills, I think that you are in line with your thinking in line with what the NEP and uh, other accreditation manuals are trying to communicate to everyone. This is exactly what is being communicated also by NEP 2020 very clearly in their policy document. Let me check whether there are any questions. Okay, so some of you have mentioned that there is only one comment about audio is not clear, but most of the comments are about audio is clear. So I'm going ahead with this. I'm sorry about those who are facing the audio problem because most likely it is a problem that really is related with your internet connectivity. Please disconnect or kill the applications if you're on mobile device, which are right now not in use. That will definitely improve the availability of internet connectivity for our webinar. Thanks a lot. So time-wise, we are doing good. I think this is 35 minutes into the session so far, and time-wise, we have covered a significant part of our today's session. It's going to be free flowing, obviously. But I'm pretty sure that how to control and cover all the required topics in webinars, three sessions of this webinar. I'm pretty okay with that. So I'm going to let it flow freely. If we have to stop at one particular point and discuss some few things in deeper, I have no problems with that, and then I'll definitely be able to cover the remaining part of it by giving appropriate attention and details into every important aspect of that we are going to cover. So please feel free to pour your questions. If in case we are unable to address all the questions, I'll follow up, with my responses later on. So I'm going to now begin the the main discussion of the day, that is program designing. And So this is how it starts. How to get the program designing right? So the first important aspect of program designing is choose the right set of program outcomes. That's the starting point. Vision, mission, program education objectives, that is all covered already. Uh, in my opinion, all the accreditation manuals, NEP 2020, they tell you already what you should be your educational objective and vision and mission, because that automatically defines what it should be. So, in my opinion, that's already taken care of. What is more important is choosing right set of POs. If we are designing a program, a new program, a brand new program, this is very important starting point. If we are revising the whole program, which was already there in existence since last many years, if we want to revive it and now fit it into the new education policy, then obviously once again thinking about the program outcomes is very important. When we think about the program outcomes, we have to wear the cap of a parent, and we have to think about our son or daughter taking admission to a program in a college, and we have to think about what will be my first question on top of my mind. If your question is as follows, that will my son or daughter will get a job after completing this program, will my son or daughter will get admission to a very good college after completing this graduation, or will my son or daughter will be able to self-employ in case the in they the son or daughter has an orientation of becoming an entrepreneur. If your answer to my question is yes, that where yes, these were the questions on top of your mind, then now remove that cap and then wear the educator's cap, and then think about that if a parent is going to think about it, then it is my responsibility to make sure that the program outcomes of this program must be oriented towards preparing the student for the end goals for which the student is going to take the admission, spend the money, spend the time, in educating himself or herself. So that is the responsibility of educators, and they have to think about what program outcomes they must look at and come out with. That's the first starting point. The second point is curriculum design, which helps get the POs. So it's a complete coordinated activity. If you want the students to achieve those program outcomes, naturally the curriculum design has to be such that it is going to help them achieve those outcomes. The granular designs of course outcomes is important because that is going to help you measure the outcomes of the students accurately, fairly, appropriately, and timely. And then that will help you fix the problems that you might observe. Each time the problem will be different. Each batch there could be a different problem for the same course, same curriculum. And hence it is going to be a continuous process of analyzing and identifying the student performances with respect to the course outcomes. So we have to give extremely high, serious uh, consideration for designing the course outcomes correctly. If the course outcomes are correctly designed, then analysis of outcomes becomes accurate, appropriate, easy, and insightful. And that is why it is very important part of outcomes based education and generally to help our country achieve the national education policy. I am very firm on this statement, and I'll show you why I said this. Um, the fourth point is high quality of assessments. improving the quality of assessment is not uh, making it difficult for the students. It's not at all like that. Improving the quality of assessment is about making sure that we are assessing the students for the course outcomes which you have designed appropriately. The coverage is good, and we are asking the questions which are related to these measuring these outcomes. And I'm talking about that kind of quality of the assessments. I'm not talking about making the exams difficult for the students. That's not the quality. Quality of the, and that is why that is also one of the major important point in program designing. And the fifth is analysis of outcomes. There has to be a way. If you believe that manually collecting the data, analyzing it frequently is is going to take a lot of time, efforts, and it may not be available every time. Then you use any technology, any way by which you can do this accurately and consistently, but that has to be there. Unless and until that is there, uh, program designing will not be cannot be improved continuously, because it's never going to be the case that once the program is designed, it is there forever without any changes. And so outcomes is going to give feedback into the designing process, and this is, and according to the feedback that is being received, the program has to continuously evolve. And hence that is why these are the five important dimensions, requirements, parameters of uh, making sure that the program designing is right. Yeah, so there's a question about from Professor Zha. Request you to please explain the difference between the POs and the PSOs. I'm going to come to that. It's very easy concept. About to start that kind of discussion. Thank you for that this question. When you think about the student, we talked about, we looked at the program designing from the educator's perspective. Now let's look at from the learner's perspective. Learners want to enter into a good institution. They want value for money. They want job and security. They want social status, and they want meaningful livelihood after they finish it. So we have to address these requirements obviously in our curriculum design, program design. So philosophy of the program designing has one more input that is also coming in the picture, which is outcomes-based education. Um, because the moment we start talking about program outcomes, course outcomes, we are talking about outcomes. We are talking about outcomes-based education. So by now everybody is aware of what is outcomes-based education, right? This is about um, defining what outcomes you are expecting, and then measure those, analyze those, identify the gaps, plan the remedial actions, and drive the continuous improvement. And that's the end-to-end process of outcomes-based education, which should be in the place, which should be seen visible everywhere in the curriculum design. So you need not have to implement outcomes-based education as a separate some process which is different than your regular teaching learning. It's part of it. It's there in the curriculum already. It's there in teaching. It's there in learning of the students. It's there in assessment. It is there in analysis. So it's there everywhere. It's not something different than what we are going to do every day. So that is about uh, the the influence of this thought process in program designing. There are two important terminology related concepts that we must understand here. Here in typically we used to call a program as a course, but in outcomes based education, or now the modern language that is to be used by us, ask us to make sure that we call undergraduate or postgraduate degree programs as programs, and the subjects in the program are called as courses. So when we talk about program outcomes, the program outcomes are at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. When we talk about course outcomes, they are at the level of a subject. and now subjects are being called as courses. So course outcomes related to courses like microeconomics, theory of machines, RDBMS, and programs are BTech, MTech, BSc Physics. Right. So just like the way, we need a reference point when we start thinking about the program outcomes. That's our first step, right? So that's the process we are going to lead now. I would request everyone to wear now a cap of a program designer, and we have to think about, we are being given a responsibility by by the higher authorities to design a program. um, and let's say, obviously, alone we are not unlikely to do it. We have to have a team with us, we have to have some mentors working with us, and some industry experts also going to be part of this, probably the committee. And then we have to lead that committee to come out with a new design of a program for example, artificial intelligence or any other, maybe environmental science, if you want to, or think about, or water management. And that is the responsibility we have to now uh, address. So we are wearing that cap of a program designer. Anybody who spends more than 10 years, in my opinion, in education field will be able to do this easily. So if we have to now start this process uh, of identifying what program outcomes I must think about for my students, then one such reference is graduate attributes. The graduate attributes are divided into three categories: knowledge, skill, and attitude. I'm going to refer to these terms again and again in this whole 3-day FDP. And because these are very important terms and categorizations, actually. So, knowledge, skill, and attitude are the three categories of the program, rather, the graduate attributes. And you can see here there are certain characteristics mentioned here: disciplinary knowledge or communication skills. Here in this case, it is scientific reasoning. These are the characteristics that should be found in a student who is graduating from a program. That's the concept. So, are these the useful list of uh, the skill sets, attributes which we want the students to possess, exhibit, showcase when they finish the graduation program? May or may not be. So we have to pick and choose the ones that are applicable to our new program. So I may pick and choose it right accordingly. So while that is being done, we have to understand what these categorizations are, and what is the significance of these categorizations. So first category of knowledge represents factual and communication knowledge, and other terminology used for this category is cognitive domain, something to do with the human mind and the process of learning. The second is skills, which represents procedural knowledge, if you look at the knowledge dimensions, and it is also called as psychomotor domain of students' learning. And the third category is metacognitive knowledge, which is also being referred as affective domain. So these are the three. Um, there are six different terms here, right? Knowledge, skill, and attitude: factual, conceptual knowledge, procedural, metacognitive knowledge, cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, affective domain. I will try to stick to one particular terminology continuously. I will use this one. Sometimes I will use this, and rarely I will use this. Um, I will make sure, I'll be very conscious of the fact that I should not confuse you. However, sometimes I may interchange the term unknowingly, but uh, I will immediately, the moment I realize that, I will try to correct myself. So this is the way, this is a categorization that we will use in our discussion. Knowledge dimensions are a very useful way of expressing how the teaching process is divided into, the how the curriculum is divided into, is very useful, powerful concept here. Look at these four dimensions: factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. The little definition under these terms, I'll just try to read out it quickly. Factual knowledge captures discrete and isolated content elements, terminology, and knowledge of specific details and elements. Conceptual knowledge comprises classifications and categories, principles and generalization, theories, models, and structures of concepts. The way I look at this is as follows. So I look at these as dots of some factual knowledge, discrete and isolated content elements. And when I start connecting these dots, I I reach the level of having conceptual knowledge about something. And then when I start using these concepts, right, it becomes procedural knowledge. And it is about skills and algorithms, techniques and methods, as well as knowledge of the criteria used to determine and justify when to do what with specific domains and disciplines. And when to do what is very important, because not only just being able to do something, but if there are 10 different ways of doing the same thing, then what should be the way to be followed when? That is something is very crucial knowledge. And that is analytical kind of or evaluation level skills that one achieves within the procedural knowledge. And metacognitive represents encompassing the strategic knowledge, knowledge about the cognitive tasks, including contextual and conditional knowledge and self knowledge, knowing about ourselves, knowing what I don't know. And that is the starting point of lifelong learning. It's obviously that you would agree that somebody who feels that I know everything will never learn. And that's the reason those who know what they don't know, they will try to achieve, learn something new every day. That is the metacognitive skill and knowledge about himself or herself. Obviously, that's not the only concept here, but metacognitive knowledge is also about things like strategic knowledge. For example, um, if you want somebody to uh, create a log of patient's health, you have never told them how to do it. So somebody who can figure that out, how to check the patient's health, which there are 50 patients there in the ward, and I am given the responsibility of creating a log of the patient's health. So the first thing that comes in my mind is how frequently I should do that. Every minute, every hour, every 30 minutes, and that has to be determined by me, because whatever knowledge and the information that I am going to collect should be meaningful to somebody to whom I am going to present it. So otherwise, what is the purpose of collecting this data? So that also I should know myself, and that is strategic knowledge, and that is something about metacognitive skills. So that's these are the four dimensions, very useful actually, and we are going to have use this understanding in designing our program. Any? Let me check whether there are any questions so far. Right. Sometimes somebody is saying that there is no audio. I wonder why. There are a huge number of participants also, by the way. There were more than 1,000 registrations, and right now, at this point in time, 400 participants are attending it. 40% attendance is there right now, and maybe it is happening because of the this tool also. Maybe it is choking up the bandwidth at times. I have no idea. Okay, so we let's go ahead. So now the question is, I I know that there is a reference point here, which is called as graduate attributes, and I have this list. of knowledge, skill, and attitude. Is there anything useful for me here which I can pick and consider as part of my program outcomes to be achieved by the students? Maybe, yes. So I will say discipline knowledge anyway, I am going to choose. Communication skills are important for my program. Critical thinking, analytic reasoning, cooperation and teamwork, moral and ethical awareness, lifelong learning. These are all useful, attributes I want to pick from this list. And this is a good list of attributes my students should achieve. So I picked up some which are relevant for my program, but that may not be the complete list. So somebody who asked me the question about program specific, the answer is coming now. So I am picking certain references from graduate attributes, but graduate attributes may not be the complete comprehensive reference for you, because these are generic attributes. I want to now add something very specific to my program, because I'm designing a program for, let's say, water management, or some environmental science, or artificial intelligence, or something in economics. So I must look at now what is specific to my particular program, and accordingly I will add those program outcomes here, and those have to be spread into knowledge, skill, and attitude, generally speaking. So when you come out with the attributes which your students want have to achieve, which are related to your program, are called as program specific outcomes. But at the end of the day, those are nothing but the program outcomes. But just for the time being, just for the sake of identifying what those specific requirements are, I'm going to call those for a minute program specific outcomes. Otherwise, there is no need of categorizing those separately and trying to think about it as something like, oh, are they something different? No, they're nothing but the program outcomes. So I purposely brought this slide here to tell everybody that you must register for tomorrow's session as well independently. You have to use the same registration link. The moment you go to the form, there is a drop down there which will allow you to select tomorrow's session, and then please fill up the form once again. That's the way these sessions are planned. Thank you. Oh, this is not the right slide there. Right. So the the program outcomes which have to be now decided by us, which will make this list of attributes complete, comprehensive. We have to think about those now. So to explain what I mean by this, I'm taking the references from NAC manual, and here you can see that there are uh, at the end of the manual, you will find these references. So you will see that there are PSOs for zoology and PSOs for economics are defined there, um, for such as these ones. These are the sample POs given by NAC: critical thinking, effective communication. Right? These are called as program outcomes by them. Social interaction, effective leader, citizenship, ethics, and these are all fall into these fall into attitude category. There are a few more here there. Environment and sustainability, self-directed and lifelong learning. These also fall into attitude category. Now they have defined some specific POs for BSc Zoology. What are those? Understand the nature and concept of cell biology, biochemistry, taxonomy, and ecology. This is very specific to zoology, but these fall into knowledge category. If you look at the fourth one, for example, analyze the relationships and amongst the animals, plants, and microbes. This is skill analysis skill. It has come here. So this is specific to zoology. Will this outcome suitable for any engineering program? No. Any law program? No. So that is why this is specific to zoology. Then if you look at BM economics, there are four different program specific outcomes defined by NAC there. These are very good examples which you can refer there and understand the concept further. So if I would then now mix two different attributes coming from which are coming from graduate attribute list and which are coming from this specific to the program, then I get the complete comprehensive list here, which is mix of two dimensions, two types of outcomes here. One is generic ones and these are one are specific ones. And so that becomes the comprehensive list of outcomes. So something is coming from a standard reference, right? And then something is coming from your future curriculum which you want to design, and then it becomes a complete comprehensive set of program outcomes. So once you arrive at this list, you don't need to think about whether something is specific or something is generic, unless there is a strong reason for you to analyze it differently. But from a student's perspective, these are nothing but the program level outcomes from the student's perspective. In fact, from the your perspective also, this should be only the program outcomes, because that those are the attributes you want your students to achieve, right? A simple question you can ask yourself: are you going to change something drastically by continue to classify the PSOs as PSOs, and is it going to change anything about how the students are going to perform in their jobs later on, or in their higher education, or in their if they become the self-employed or some other domain of life they lead their life to for later on. So if your answer is yes, please continue to classify those as PSOs. But in my opinion, there is no need of doing that, because from the student's perspective, it is nothing but the program level outcomes that they have to achieve and enter into a new world which they are aiming to go after they finish their graduation. Uh, I'm quickly taking a look at. So I believe that the question related to what is PO, what is PSO is addressed. Somebody has asked me whether a recording of this session will be given. Yes, there will be recording available, and it will be posted on Inpods' YouTube channel called Inpods Faculty Commons, and there you will see this video later on also. Okay, so yeah, so now actually, all those questions related to POs and the PSOs, I believe that I have addressed those. There is one more interesting question here by Professor Ramakrishnanji. Where do you place experiential learning in the learning attitude? It is experiential learning of what? Basically, are you experiential learning is a method of achieving some outcome. So the outcome could be from skill category, or it could be from your knowledge category, as well as from attitude category. So it is actually a tool. Experiential learning is a tool to achieve something. So it is not an outcome itself, uh, right? So if, for example, if you are conducting a blood donation camp, then it's experiential learning, right? But what is aim for that? Probably you want the students to learn team, kind of working in teams. That's the goal, right? And that's the outcome you want to achieve there. So it's a tool to achieve some outcome, not the outcome itself. Somebody is asking about the course outcomes. We are going to cover course outcomes very elaborately. Uh, Professor Malika is asking, how are languages to be implemented according to NEP? I did not get this question. Please elaborate it. Thank you very much. I'm going ahead. So this is the example which is in front of you, which belongs to uh, a program from San Jose State University in the US. And these are the program outcomes of artificial intelligence, masters in artificial intelligence. Look at these program outcomes here. Be able to demonstrate an understanding of advanced knowledge of the practical artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is knowledge category. Be able to tackle complex machine learning skill. Be able to lead and participate in the team related to attitude. Be aware of ethical, economic, once again, attitude. Be able to advance successfully in their profession, attitude. Three POs are related to attitude category. Be able to communicate, skill. So two skill, one knowledge, and three attitude category. Such a only there are how many six outcomes are there at the program level, out of which 50% weightage is given to attitude category. Look at the kind of importance being given to attitude category of the POs, and that is exactly what is being highlighted in the NEP 2020 document also. So we will now cover this particular section and then stop today for this today's session. I'll address questions if any, and then we can conclude today's session. So this is a short, small section of our uh, presentation today. Categories of the POs, right? We talked about the knowledge dimensions. So I have also given you an idea of how the knowledge, skill, and attitude are categorized into three um, classifications, and what is the association of knowledge dimensions with each of these categories. I'm presenting you the same idea a little differently here. So these are the three classifications of the program outcomes. This is their association with the knowledge dimensions, and these are the domains, right? So this is how the POs are supposed to be divided all the time. And then there are examples of the POs falling into each category, which also we have seen earlier how these are represented uh, to be the POs of different categories. Once again, I wanted to just remind it again and again that please register for the tomorrow's session so that those who are interested to continue attending these further do not miss, and there is no confusion about how to connect again tomorrow. So that's it for the day. Uh, we will continue our discussion tomorrow from this point onwards. It's a logical break that we can think about. There are quite a few questions here. How to measure the POs objectively? We are going to discuss this on the third day. Please attend that session, Professor Siv Kumar. Dr. Shobhit is asking, kindly tell something more about research skill activities. I will try to address this question in a different manner. Probably, uh, uh, I will try to cover this as a part of one of my concept, presentation to you. I'll keep this question in mind. We have not reached that kind of discussion yet. Professor Pandalapuram is asking how important are stakeholders in designing the POs? Important uh, concepts we have to also understand from the industry expert, because we as a lead, let's say we are leading the team of the program designing committee, and I personally may not have all the knowledge about what's happening in the the industry right now. um, if it is an emerging field, for example, artificial intelligence is very emerging field, the industry experts also will not be able to give you a correct guidance, because they themselves are not fully kind of conversant with the challenges and the solutions to the challenges. So they might not give you a clear direction. So you may want to engage with multiple industry representatives to know more about what challenges the industry is facing and how to address those in the curriculum. So yes, the stakeholders are very important. Even student themselves could be important. The parents themselves could be important as a part of this thing. Obviously, they may not attend any each and every meeting, but you can at least take their understand what their opinion is about the the future of the program that you are designing. Yes, thank you for asking that important question. Actually, Professor Sanjeevani is asking how to achieve PO 12, that is lifelong learning. Actually, this is about helping students know what they don't know. Only then the lifelong learning is possible. One of the very simple example I can quote here is something like this. So if you have just recently taught some disciplinary knowledge about something, and if you frame a question to know what the student know right now, just I finished talking about let's say uh, the difference between program outcomes and program specific outcomes, and whether they are same or different, and how you should treat it as a program designer, whether you want to continue to separate them from the category, or you want to mix them and then start calling them as program outcomes. And I told you about from the student's perspective, they're all outcomes to be achieved at the end of the program. They don't care whether you want to call them as PSOs or POs, right? For them, they are just the outcomes at the program level. So that is the conceptual knowledge I have communicated to you. If I would ask a question to you, tell me what is the difference. What is the difference between um, uh, the knowledge and the skill category of the program outcomes. Now your mind will start recalling what was discussed there in regards with these classifications. But if I just change this question to tell me what you don't know about the categories such as knowledge and the skill, then immediately your mind will start analyzing what you know and what you don't know. That is teaching the mind of the students to seek what they don't know. And that is the start of lifelong learning. So in my opinion, these kind of program outcomes are to be achieved by framing your questions little differently. Please let me know if you don't agree with this. If you have some better explanations or answer to this question, I would request others also to contribute. I will read out their comments to answer this question. But this is very good question actually. Thank you very much for asking that, Professor Sanjeevani. Professor Alok is asking, the term understand is not used in writing outcomes as it's not measurable. It is advised that we should instead use verbs such as describe, define, explain, discuss. What is your view? This is absolutely right. We are going to cover this in tomorrow's session. And that is when there will be a good clarity we can achieve in this part of course outcomes designing. Professor Ajarapu is asking, can the video recording of today's session be shared? Yes, it will be shared. There will be the YouTube channel of Inpods called Inpods Faculty Commons, and it will be shared on that. Professor Shivkumar is asking, assessing PO outcomes achievement by a learner is ultimate goal. Is it really possible unless we have good alumni network? Uh, Absolutely. So, digitization is helping us reaching out to our students later on as also. A very simple step that you can take is ask your students to open a LinkedIn account. So automatically you can track their journey, where they are going, right? And that is good enough for you to reach out to your students later on, understand what they are doing later on, and connect with their employers, know more. So it is required, and obviously it's possible also here onwards, because of the digitization of each and every most important aspects around us is becoming easy because of the um, digitization. Professor Kiran Rao is asking attainment levels, how to measure COs and the POs. We are going to cover that in the third day session. Professor Narendra is asking how many COs to be set for a subject. A good question. Tomorrow, this question will be answered because it is part of the tomorrow's session. Professor Ravi has asked, kindly tell about articulation metrics. We will cover that again. The very next point, or the first point tomorrow, will be that. Next is Mrs. Sneha is asking, uh, if you could highlight about COPO mapping, defining CO and correlating it with Bloom's taxonomy, and can two units of in a course go with one CO? Please tell. All these questions will be addressed tomorrow in our session. Please join, register without fail, and you will get your answers tomorrow. Difference between the POs and the COs is, I have explained this to Dr. Bimal. From the attainments perspective, there is no change in the strategy of attainment computation. I'll explain that in the third session. How often can the POs and the COs be altered? May happen, may not happen. It's really dependent on the kind of the thoroughness and the comprehensiveness that was there when you defined those POs and the COs initially. But if you implement a right process of designing the program outcomes and the course outcomes, I don't think that you will require anything to be changed unless the curriculum itself changes. Then you have to fine tune it. For example, if your course has to be changed, little bit curriculum has to be changed. But how would you define? How would you understand that a curriculum of a course has to be changed? Based on what are you thinking? Are you going to take this action? This is maybe because of the outcomes analysis is telling you that this particular instructional design needs to be changed because students are continuously failing to perform better. So the topic has to be there, but the way it is to be communicated, taught, needs to be changed. That is the instructional design change. But something that you have to throw away and add something new in the curriculum may have to happen because there you would realize that certain part of the POs are not getting addressed. Students are failing to achieve the specific program outcomes. Then why? Because that particular part is never covered in the curriculum. So you have to add something in the curriculum of that course, and then you will add more outcomes of the course because you have added certain content there, and that will make some revisions in the course outcomes design. So that's how actually the granularity of the course outcomes is important here. Uh, in my opinion, the boundary of a course will be very thin in the future. It is basically a content will be tied up with a course outcome. It's a basically very small piece, kind of that will be connected with the outcomes. So when you teach that, that's over. So whether you call it as a part of a course or not doesn't matter actually. The more linkage will be from the program outcome and course outcomes perspective rather than teaching a course. Instead of that, if we start orienting our mindset towards achieving the course outcome, achieving the program outcomes, not achieving the course content, then suddenly we'll see that the boundary of the course is thinning, is breaking into pieces, and probably that will be that is something that will happen, in my opinion, very soon if we start looking at OB implementation seriously. Dr. Manju is asking, is it mandatory to have less course outcomes? Again, I will explain this question, tomorrow, because we are going to have a good discussion on course outcomes designing tomorrow. Professor Abdul is asking, do we have to calculate COs and the POs attainment for each student? Absolutely, for every student, every question that student answers. And that's why it requires data collection, and it's better you automate it than keeping it manual. Um, Dr. Shankar is asking, any software? Yes, Inpods actually is a software for COPO attainment computation. I keep talking about Inpods company. I don't refer that here directly, because you will say that this is a sales session. I don't want to make that happen. That's why I don't explicitly mention that. But yes, Inpods is actually designed for automating the COPO attainments. Um, yeah. So next is once again, Dr. Abdul is asking, can we calculate the average COP attainment? Yes, you can calculate it. There are ways in achieving that. I'll show you how to do it. The third day session, please attend it. What is the difference between graduate attributes and program outcomes? Professor Manhar is asking. Graduate attributes is a reference point to come out with the program outcomes. Yeah. So that's the actually it's a graduate attribute. It's a standard taxonomy of the attributes to be achieved by the students who are graduating. So that becomes a reference point for you. You pick and choose the right attributes from that list, and then make those as part of your program outcomes. And then you choose that these are the standard attributes, right? And then you think about your program specific outcomes. So if you are designing a program for law students, then your program specific outcomes are focusing on law. If you are designing a program in uh, for physics, nuclear physics, then naturally your program outcomes are related to the program that you are designing. So it's a mix of the specific ones and the standard ones. Those are called as program outcomes. So graduate attributes is just a reference point. Once you take the references from that, you don't have to then further consider that in your designing. That's it. The purpose is over. It's gone. You kept it away. Don't consider that again. Go ahead with your program designing now. Think about your POs have to be achieved by the students, and then you decide your designing of the curriculum. I hope that that is clear. I'm moving ahead. Professor Chennappa is saying, please send the link of actually the same registration link which you used to register these to this session. I'm actually the email that you will receive 1 hour from now will also have that link. Please monitor your emails. Please check your promotion folder or junk folder in case it goes there. But after 1 hour, the moment I stop the session, count 1 hour from that, you will receive an email, and in that email you will find the link. uh, Professor Sneha is asking, CO can be revised when syllabus is revised? Absolutely, yes. Professor Rajkumar is asking, what is the difference between program outcomes and the program objectives? uh, Actually, uh, see, program outcomes are educational program outcomes primarily. That is a notion. Program objectives could be non-academic also many times. Uh, Program objectives could be academic as well as non-academic. In non-academic objectives of a program, you are preparing the students to make our country strong, right? You are preparing the students, you are designing a program to address the skill gap of our country. It could be a non-academic objective of your program. So that is the difference between objectives and the outcomes. Outcomes are always academic outcomes. That is the notion. Objectives could be non-academic also. Dr. Shikha Maheshwariji is asking, are the two terms academic excellence and academic quality are synonyms? Uh, Academic excellence and academic quality. Actually, this is a very highly subjective discussion because the scope of the term that you're using for academic excellence, for example, could be you have to explain that, what is the scope that you want to consider for academic excellence and academic quality. uh, Academic quality you are going to measure with the help of qualitative and quantitative measures. Some metrics will be there, and you would try to define that quality appropriately in subjective or objective manner, rather qualitatively or quantitatively. You will try to come out with some kind of measure of the academic quality that you are achieving. When it comes to academic excellence, then it gives you some kind of assurity of the outcomes that you are going to achieve every time. So that's basically your framework or your process that you are following is it's sound enough to give you very predictable results of your process. In my opinion, that is something called as academic excellence. That's the way I would interpret these two terms differently. But as I mentioned, these are very subjective terms, and every person will have a different understanding of these two terms. Thanks a lot for that question, Professor Rishika. Professor Jailakshmi says, for an institution, POs are sufficient, or it is mandatory to have program education objectives also. So these are two different levels actually. Program outcomes are children of program education objectives. Program education objectives are found easily in NEP 2020, NAC accreditation manual, or NBA accreditation manual. If you read, understand what message they are trying to give us as educators, you will immediately understand what the program education objective of my program should be. Just a while ago, I was uh, sharing my thoughts about what is program outcome and what is program objective, and that is precisely is the difference between the POs and the POs. Program education objectives may be academic or non-academic also. So POs are at the program outcomes are children of program education objectives. Uh, the question is about whether Inpods is a free or paid software. No, it's a commercial product. So, but if you want to try it for your course only for your course, it can be given for free for you to explore, understand, learn more about OB. Professor Malika has explained her question further. Any as languages are taught generally as second languages, should the course objective cater to the requirements of the respective program outcomes? Actually, communication skill is one of the best program outcomes example, which is related to languages. And languages are important tools to get the skills of communications. So in that's the relationship you can establish. Languages are also important for helping the students express their thoughts in the written manner or verbal manner. So that's why languages are a very important foundation actually. Interestingly, Dr. Malika, there was some research done, you can Google and find out more about it, that when a study research was done for those who are kind of performing academically better, students, and also when they did good in careers, right, progressively, it was found that their language skills were better, technical skills were also better. They were equivalent with the technical skills of other people who were not so good, but they actually were unable to perform better and excel in their career because they were lacking language skills. So it actually, it's languages study is extremely important foundation for any graduation program. So we should not treat languages as secondary at all. In my opinion, languages are primary foundation of building block of career of the students. What is the Professor Chanukta is asking, what is the performance index that indicates the quality of a particular program? So you have to define actually a way of coming out with some number. Um and my idea is that, if you are a technical program, then NBA is a manual which you can use to measure the effectiveness of your program. But if it is not good enough for you to come out with some kind of measure, you can devise your own framework for that. NAC is also another manual reference, which is applicable, let's say, at the institute level. But if you use that concept of NAC for your program, who is stopping you? Because it is your own personal, not only personal, official, but formal, a task given to you to measure the performance index of a quality of a particular program. So you can mix the good ideas of, let's say, NBA or NAC or ABET or any other such accreditation manuals, and mix and come out with your own consolidated manual which is good for your program, and come out with some kind of performance index, right? That also is possible. So it's about actually, coming out with your own method of computing the performance index. And, Professor Atul is asking, is module outcome and course outcomes different? I'm going to address this tomorrow. Sir, please attend tomorrow's session, Professor Atul. Professor Shika says, completely agreed with your thoughts, and thank you very much. So that's it actually. So quite there were comments about the content of this webinar. Thank you very much for appreciating these efforts. That is something that keeps motivating to me. Uh, Thanks a lot. So we are reaching the end of our today's session. Thanks a lot for your time, valuable time, your questions, your participation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Bye bye. Take care, and see you tomorrow.